Imagine turning the struggles of dyslexia and other neurodiversities into superpower that fuels creativity, success, and impact. That's exactly what Jake and Max did with Superpower Mentors, a program empowering neurodiverse individuals to thrive. And today they're going to share with us how you can do it too. Hi, I'm Gil Gershoni, founder of Dyslexic Design Thinking and Gershoni Creative Agency. As someone who is embracing the power of thinking differently, I'm so excited to share this inspiring conversation with you today. Hit the like button, subscribe, and stick around. Let's jump right in. Welcome, Jake. Welcome, Max. Great to see you guys.
Hey, you too, Gil. Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us, Gil.
Oh, absolutely. I've been so inspired by what you guys are doing. I wanted to start with really kind of, first and foremost to our audience, you guys are siblings. You guys also are business partners. How is it as siblings working together? And did you ever imagine that this is where you guys are going to end up?
Gil, Max, I'm going to jump on this one. So I started Superpower Mentors about 5 years ago. And Max and I have always talked about the idea of working together, but it's always been the question when, right? So building the company first on my own, Max was always there kind of as an advisor, as someone that I would lean on with questions. And then there was one point of where there was an opportunity for Max to jump in, and it was the best decision that we ever made.
Amazing.
Jake really nailed it. The overall essence of our relationship growing up has been not if we were going to do something, if we were going to go into business, if we're going to be partners, whatever that is, it's when that's going to happen. So Jake being the total opposite in a lot of respects as myself, growing up, of course, we had this, butting heads relationship, but you get to a certain point, as all siblings do, where that blossoms into a real friendship and a real respect for one another. And because we're such opposites, we can stay in our lanes. And that's just what we do here at Superpower Mentors.
Mm-hmm. How are you similar and how are you different?
Oh, man. I would say that if you put us both together into one brain, we complete a whole brain, right? So I'm right side, Max is the left side, right? And I think that's a big point here is, Max is 4 years younger than me. And being able to recognize our own strengths and challenges. What is my strengths are Max's challenges, and what are Max's strengths are my challenges, right? So we're able to really feed off each other, recognizing that part of being neurodiverse is, for me, I thrive when you give me one job and I'm the best. When you give me 10 things to think about at once, that's where I struggle. And that is Max's strength. Max can see 10 things at once and be able to manage all of that when I can just focus on that one thing. I would say that for me would be big.
Partnerships are best described and are best formulated on the foundation of humility, knowing who you are, knowing what you're good at, knowing what you need to add to your life in order to be successful. Jake, 2 years ago when we first partnered, had that aha moment of, okay, I really need the other half of my skill set in order for Superpower Mentors to be as impactful as possible. And here we are today. We've been working pretty seamlessly. We've had our ups and downs, but we're siblings. We've spent our entire lives really knowing how to go at it, but we are able to do it in context to a greater mission.
I can so relate to what you both are saying about the way you think differently and how to embrace relationship, partnership, mentors, and realize that the fact that I am very strong in one way and the other person is strong in another way, it's not a competition. It's not better or worse. It's better together. And arriving to those successes is so much better. It's like, I love that idea that when you kind of embrace that, you are stronger for it,
I always say that when Max and I first started working together, Gil, there was this, as a guy with ADHD, right? Struggling being misunderstood all my life, was something that I always felt that I had to prove myself. And I feel like that a lot of men listening to this could relate, right? Of where we kind of have this little chip on our shoulder, and to be able to take a minute and reflect and say, you know what, I actually can't do everything, right? And there are people in my corner that can fill those roles. And there's this huge analogy that we like to use that, we're the captain of our own ship. In order to drive a ship, you can't do it alone. You need a crew.
Right.
You need a co-captain. You need your shipmates. You need the people in the sails. You need the people down in the hole. And to be able to recognize that and to find the right people to fill in those voids that are perhaps maybe you can do individually, but not collectively is, ever since Max came in, everything started to explode in a good way. I kept hitting this ceiling. Like, why can't I just get above this one piece in the business? And I realized that because I needed someone else to take on these other areas.
Yeah. Yeah. Max, I know that you were the captain of your varsity basketball team in college, right? High school? College?
High school. And then there was a moment I played basketball abroad in Rome, Italy for my first semester of college. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's
but
awesome.
mainly captain in high school. And yeah.
How is that experience as we're talking about teams and leadership? How does that help you kind of begin your career as a leader, as a professional, and how does it affect your work environment?
My experience with basketball, the ups and the downs, I can talk about this for a long time, but my experiences with the varying styles of leadership helped shape what I wanted to become. I'm a strong believer in diversifying your experiences. And the most powerful experience that you can have is realizing what you don't like. Because that means that you're trying many different things. That means you're putting yourself in many different experiences. I had a lot of leaders in my time playing basketball that I took away things that I didn't necessarily want to be myself. And that helped shape my mentality of I want to be a coach, not necessarily a basketball coach, but I want to help guide people and guide a group of people to being their best selves. And that's in essence what I tried to implement as a leader, whether it was on my own basketball team in high school or whether it's internally at Superpower Mentors. It's taking all of our people that are so passionately involved with the company and guiding them into being their best selves and overall making the company its best self.
Jake, I know you wrote in 2019, you wrote this beautiful poem, The Forgotten Child. Tell me a little bit about the poem. What was the catalyst? What was the spark for you to write the poem?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I had the opportunity, going back a little bit further, of going to a school that specialized in learning differences. And that story began after being pulled out of school in sixth grade, being 4 grade levels behind in reading, forced to read out loud in class, hearing the kids laughing and being told I would never go to college. And those memories stick, right? And I had the opportunity of getting into a school that specialized in learning differences. It changed my life. And 100% of us got into college. I got into college despite what I was being told. And it was like, oh my goodness. So fast forward a little bit more, and here I am in school, and I'm starting to see a lot of my fellow classmates drop out from my old high school. And it started to make me think, like, my destiny wasn't supposed to have been here. I was told that this wouldn't happen, and here I am.
Right.
In school. And I had this epiphany moment that, I need to somehow share this, but it can't be about me, right? Because it's not just my story. So I was inspired to write this spoken word poem for a poetry slam that was a really big event at my school. And it was about those who are misunderstood for who they are from society, and then them embracing themselves and then doing something about it. Right? It's called The Forgotten Child. And that was the catalyst of really my whole journey in this space, right? It was picked up by Harvey Hubble, who is an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker. And he was like, Jake, I want to turn that into a film. So in 2019, we were filming it, and then we launched the video in October. And, within 24 hours, it was getting a lot of attention. And I was being reached out to speak at some places. And I started to see a lot of parents coming up. And I realized that the forgotten child represented more than just learning differences. And actually, every single person has something in them that is their own younger self that they perhaps have forgotten.
Mm. Did that poem influence you to start advocating for neurodiverse individual? Is that kind of what that was the beginning of that for you?
It did.
Mm-hmm.
Superpower Mentors was built to basically attract the families of the forgotten child. Everything that the forgotten child represents. Okay. Because the forgotten child for us, listen, like we've become so obsessed with trying to find the answer in our society that I believe that pursuit has become the problem. And we forget that our confidence is it's in our face. It's in our interest, the things that we love. It's right there, but we forget. Right? So even just like right back as a kid building Legos and just like when things were just like your mind was exploding, like, why aren't we doing that again? So that's the concept where not only did I dedicate my life to want to, empower the forgotten child and help people put on their metaphorical cape, right? Embracing who they are, but building a program of which those that have already discovered themselves can go back to empower those that are currently in it, right? And also supporting the parents. So really, that's the essence of it and how that's been influenced within Superpower Mentors.
Amazing. Max, what happened in your path that you guys came together? Like, was there a moment for you that you said, you know what? I'm going to go and join Jake and make this vision happen?
I've always been involved with Superpower Mentors. There's never been a time that I haven't been involved with Superpower Mentors. I come from a business background. I went to school, studied business. My father is a second generation business owner. That's a family business. A lot of our discussions around dinner was about the family business. It was like we turned our dining room into a boardroom sometimes. So Jake, building this company, I've always been assisting. I've always been advising. So coming into Superpower Mentors was very natural because it's always been part of my life. Advocating and helping and assisting and being that other side of Jake has always been part of my life. And when the opportunity arose in early 2023, I was still in school. I was still studying, but it didn't matter because it was such a no-brainer to begin a journey of impact and fulfillment and helping a community that so desperately needs advocates and support that I could never pass it up and I would never look back and do it any differently.
And Gil, our whole family is in the business of helping people. That's what we do. It's like in the Sussman blood, right? And to recognize that there's this population of people with so much potential that are so misunderstood, it's like there's just a key that we just need to unlock, right? And something about this story is that in and of itself, this whole experience, we're living the forgotten child also, right? And how we go back working with these kids and it's healing in and of itself. Like I healed my entire past from working with these kids, right? We block it out and all of a sudden we get a chance to work with them again.
For our audience out there that maybe is not familiar with you guys, Superpower Mentors, tell me a little bit about what is Superpower Mentors?
Sure. Superpower Mentors is a mentorship program, right? Of where we match neurodiverse youth and young adults to their own mentor who not only shares the same learning difference, but more importantly, the same interests. Okay. And it was built really recognizing that there's so many professionals out there for our kids. And every single person plays a very important role. Remember the ship analogy, right? Of where, there's a crew for everyone. But in that crew, there's no one that specializes in relatability. Someone that can say, I not only have what you have, but I love what you love and I've been where you've been.
Mhm.
So that's the essence of Superpower Mentors. And the other side of that is we work with the parents, right? Giving them feedback, right? Helping them be their family partner because we're helping their kids build a foundation to independence, right? And now we're able to help be their bridge as parents navigate their path.
Mhm. Mhm. What type of individuals can benefit from Superpower Mentor services?
What we found, which is very interesting, is that while the presentation of dyslexia, ADHD, autism are very distinct and different, the social and emotional impact is very similar across the board from a lot of our mentees. The loneliness, the anxiety, it's startling how similar a lot of these cases, a lot of these neurodiversity presents itself in different situations. But as it relates to transitions, one of our specialties, for example, that families come to us is when their child is in a state of transition, when they go from middle school to high school to college, college to the workplace. Transitions are extraordinarily impactful for the neurodiverse mind. Without structure, without routine, without the known, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of stress, and there's often a lot of freezing up.
Mhm.
By giving a frozen mentee a mentor that is like them, we have seen extraordinary boost in confidence and self-esteem because of just pairing someone up with someone that's similar, that's also been through very similar challenges.
Mhm.
1 out of 5 people have dyslexia.
Right.
It's so common, yet we feel so alone.
Right.
Something doesn't add up, right? So instead of just focusing, like I said earlier, on just solving, what if we just look at what we have in front of us? Okay. So that's the concept of just the color paint. We've done 10,000 sessions.
Wow.
It's been unbelievable. 10,000 sessions. We've worked with hundreds of families from all over the world because it's virtual, which, by the way, the virtual component is, the stereotype around virtual with people with learning differences is that it doesn't work, right? Virtual doesn't work. Well, the reason why that we found is because relatability is not in the picture,
Right.
right? If I love space and rocket ships and my mentor's at NASA, right, who is like, in their mid to late 20s, early 30s with dyslexia, why not talk to them? Nerd out with me over video games and building robots,
Yeah.
right? That's how
Yeah.
we're able to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can see why you guys are at 10,000 plus, and I'm sure by next year you're going to double it, is because helping an individual find themselves and see themselves getting the fact that they actually have this innate power and then see them sort of thrive with it. I mean, who doesn't want to do that? I mean, that is
Yeah.
so powerful,
There's this whole controversial discussion around like dyslexia and superpowers, right? And I don't know if you ever heard this before, but
Mhm.
it's like, well, we can't say that they have these superpowers because that, minimizes the pain and suffering they're going through and all these different things. And I want to call this out because we're literally called superpower mentors, right? And I want to bring this up because I think it's an interesting discussion because I think that a lot of it is about perspective, right? You go from, when you hear Superman, it's not necessarily Superman because that's what we called him. Just like Richard Branson, like we hear Richard Branson, we're like, oh, billionaire, Virgin Airlines. We forget that he was just a kid who was extremely misunderstood too, just like Clark Kent, right? Just like you and I. At some point, we were extremely misunderstood, just like everyone else, these kids today. And at some point along the way, we put on our cape. And once we did that, we launched. Okay. And we all did. That's how we became successful. But these kids, when they're in it, right, having Richard Branson as your closest role model is very difficult because he's a billionaire, right? It's very hard to feel relatable to someone like that. But what we forget is that just like Branson, these kids are going through it right now, and it's not far off, right? Our mission is to help these kids put on their cape early
Right.
versus later.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. What is the difference between superpower mentors, therapists, or tutors? Tell me a little bit about how that's different from that, and what would, let's say, like myself, a dyslexic, what kind of support does Superpower Mentors provides for individual like myself in a day to day? Like, what would one expect from the mentor relationship?
It's a great question. We get asked this all the time. I first want to preface that superpower mentors are in no way a replacement for a licensed medical professional,
Okay.
right? Could we have someone that's a social worker as a mentor? Sure, but that's not the scope. Okay. So the difference between us and a coach, right, is that a coach, which by the way are great, when you hire a coach, you hire someone for a specific purpose, right? I want to get better at this thing, and they're going to take me there. Right. But what's often forgotten is that a coach doesn't need to have the thing, number one, to help you grow with something. And also, you may not build a relate to them. Right. And a coach, when you think of a sideline, when you think of a game, like a soccer game, a coach in a soccer game is standing on the sidelines, yelling at the players, saying, "Hey, go over there," right? And bringing it back to this, you should write the email, right? You should make a list. But guess who's going to forget to make the list? Me, because I'm neurodiverse. I'm not going to do it, right? So a mentor is actually on the field playing the game with them, saying, "Hey, let's go over here together. Let's write that list right now. Let's call a school and ask them questions to the admissions office together," right?
Yeah.
A piece of the program that sticks out for me as the biggest difference between therapy, coach, and all the above is our work with the family as a family unit. That's where our relationship with Jake and myself is very interesting. This is the family. We have different relationships, and every mentee that we work with also has their own unique family dynamic. That's why there's an emphasis with our work with every family on an individual level, so that the progress and the milestones and the growth that we have with our mentee is also being communicated as a group and not necessarily just with the mentor. There's a full communication channel between all parties involved so that we ensure progress.
Yeah.
I love that. Tell me more about how does Superpower Mentors empowers young people, and more specifically, how it empowers their parents?
Gil, I would say Superpower Mentors represents the light at the end of the tunnel. Empowering parents, getting parents excited for the future of their neurodiverse child when there's so many unknowns, that's a feat in and of itself. A lot of parents come to us very concerned about what the next step is, or what they're not even thinking about 2 steps down the line. They just want right here and now, what can we do to get from point A to point B within the shortest time frame possible? Through Superpower Mentors, we are connecting a parent with the older version of their child that has already gone through all of this stuff, that's already been struggling and overcame it, and has their own unique stories and experiences to that fact, connecting not just the mentee to this person, but the parents. The parents are like, okay, I can take a breath. Things are going to be okay. Struggling is fine, but it's not going to turn out like my worst fears.
As you were saying before, Jake, 1 out of 5 are dyslexics, and in every category of innovation, music, sciences, there's a dyslexic. There's a neurodiverse individual at the helm. But they needed that contrast in order to learn that they know what it is to get over and to build on top of and think differently and think outside of the category. And I think it's so beautiful that the parents can meet that mentor that's much further along than their child and see, oh, how did he or she overcome? And
Right.
look how they are addressing their community, their work, their relationship there. And all of a sudden there's a hope there, and there is an ally there, and there is a community there, and a confidant. And I think that is so, so powerful. And of course, that's just that alone creates transformation. Who are these mentors?
Hmm.
What's their backgrounds?
Oh, they're some of the coolest people I've ever met.
That's an understatement. Cool is one thing, but the passion, Gil, I've had hundreds of mentor interviews. I would say at least 90% of all of the mentors that we have on board today, they each said independently, obviously they don't all know each other, but independently in the interview, each of them said, I wish I had this when I was a kid. Where was this when I was a kid? I needed this when I was a kid. Independently, that is by far the most common thing that I hear in any interview. But as far as literally who they are, anywhere, like Jake said, NASA, we had a mentor at Boeing, there's to music artists, to even teachers and university professionals and customer success. Like it spans the entire gamut.
Do the mentors have to have certain kind of credentials in order to be able to do this work?
Yes.
Being a mentor requires stability. So, being fully employed, having a career, being a professional, that is something that we are looking very close on. Being in school, studying, that also counts. Being on your own path is one of the things we look for. But we take our mentor security, background checks. We do the up the wazoo. That is our top priority at all times, as it should be. But our mentors' credentials is lived experience. Beyond the actual resume, the mentors need to have lived it.
Right.
They need to really show that they experienced what we're talking about here, what these kids have gone through. And our credential that our mentors bring to the table is exactly that.
One of the credentials is obviously to be able to identify that they have their own learning difference and their own struggles. But beyond that, putting on the cape, right? Because a lot of people today who are neurodiverse, unfortunately, are still struggling massively.
Right.
Right. So it can't just be anybody. Right. What we're looking for is that person that has put it on and then they're running with their path. Right. We don't have, necessarily full-time mentors. These are all people that are pursuing their dream. Right. So we have a course also for them that will be able to teach them the essential skill sets and how to effectively mentor using our method and our philosophies, combined with several other experts and books and all that. But really, it's meant to guide them, move them forward.
Can I ask you a question? What would a mentor have done in your story growing up?
So the question is, what would a mentor would have done when I was young that would have supported my struggles and differences?
Exactly.
I am really, really good at failing. And the funny thing about failure, it's the only place to be if you want to be on the cutting edge on anything, because you're about to take a leap and a risk that nobody else did. And you have to be comfortable to say, I will figure it out through the process of discovery. And hopefully half of my choices would be incorrect so I can adjust. Versus that I am the failure. I am incorrect. I did not succeed, right? So I think my parents were really, really strong, and my family was really strong with that kind of guidance around that. They always were able to see where I would be. Like they're always able to see my inner light, even though there's so many moments as a little boy that it was not apparent, right? And the struggle that was the most loud things in the room. So they always looked at me with that optimism, with the belief that you can do anything if you try, because then you're just no longer sitting in that sort of shadow of the pain. But I think that I got very lucky to have just, and my parents at the time were not traditional parents. So they
Right.
were, my mom is an artist. My father is a businessman. My grandparents were entrepreneurs, 3-generation immigrants. So we had so much diversity and difference that was very much, my grandmother was a painter and an artist. So there was a lot of right, left brain in my family that I was very lucky for, But, and the funny thing is, to your question, Max, I learned that you never arrive. There's no end goal. There's always pursuit, and that pursuit is the point. Because the moment I would arrive, then what is left?
Coincidentally, I just posted on LinkedIn the other day. We had a family. We met with a family. Jake was talking to this family, and the dad said, we don't use dyslexia. We don't use the word dyslexia. We don't tell our kid that they have dyslexia because it's a crutch. We don't want it to be a crutch. We don't want it to be an excuse. And, that's like just at the core, the very opposite of what we believe here. Because if you want dyslexia to be a superpower, if Gil, you mentioned very often, dyslexics look at the world, see the world, process the world extremely differently, uniquely, and oftentimes more effectively. How can you harness that power without first recognizing at the very essence that you have it?
Right. One thing we say in our agency is I always try to find what we call the weakness, right?
Yeah.
The discord. Where is your psyche, your confidence, your business, whatever it is, where is it pinch? Because if you run away from it, it's going to get tighter. It's funny, when we run away from our own demons, they chase us. But if we face them, then they sort of relax and they become just part of us. And before you know it, actually, the thing I love the most is the fact that I'm dyslexic through and through.
Yeah.
Because everything I do is dyslexic. And I have a beautiful, colorful life because I feed my dyslexia. Instead of trying to suppress it and change it and I do it, I ask myself, what can I do right now to be more dyslexic? Because that means I'm loving myself, I'm building my confidence, and I'm really acknowledging is that that's the way I was born, and good or bad or in everything in between, it's who I am, And I often meet, as you guys, a lot of parents that says, well, we don't want to talk about it because we don't want it to be a crutch. It's not a crutch. It's the way my brain works, so
feed it.
Make more of it, and then when you relax, all of a sudden you can dance with it and you can overcome the simple things or the different things, I was talking to a group of students, high school, the other day, and we talked about who is dyslexic, and it was a great conversation between everybody. And at the end, we were kind of wrapped it up by saying, most people that are not with neurodiversity, they are very good linear thinkers. They know how to walk. But us with neuro differences, neuro individuals, we are the one that can leap. We leap over letters, we leap over time, we leap over information. We're the one that can fly. So who in this room is disabled? We're all abled. We're all hyper abilities if we just embrace that, But it have to start from the beginning, which kind of leads me to a question for you, Jake. How old were you when you were diagnosed with ADHD?
It must have been third grade. And it was a really confusing time because, a few years when I started Superpower Mentors, I found my third grade report cards and what the teachers wrote. And reflecting back, when it came to group projects and all that, I was like the top, right? I was the leader. I was so into it, right? But when it came to independent reading, I was the biggest disruption. And in this 2-paragraph analysis of Jake Sussman, 8 of those sentences talked about my behavioral problem, right? So that was really where things started to begin, of where I was realizing I was different because I was getting thrown out of class every day. But I didn't know why. But I was so good in these other things. But when it came to reading, what is this? And I was so angry. I remember I was just like, my guard was up. I was just hated teachers. Like I was always like questioning authority, because at a certain point, when your whole world is filled with fear, anxiety, and stress, when your entire relationship with learning is physical pain, like whenever I picked up a book, Gil, I felt a physical reaction to my stomach of pain.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So once that happens, how do you expect to teach a kid how to read?
Right.
Seriously, right? Or in Gillingham, which I'm a big advocate for, didn't work. It didn't work. Right? It only works as good as the kid open to learning it. Right? So like for me, I was like, I'm out. So that's when my parents pulled me out.
Those are the institutions. So that is the Southport School in Southport, Connecticut. They put Jake on the path to where we are sitting here today. That moment in that classroom is the genesis of Jake's new path that he found to Superpower Mentors, it's like you can look, it's amazing because you can look back at those inflection points of all of a sudden we are now in we're going somewhere else. We're going in a new direction. We're going in a new space. We're going to the moon. And those, Jake shared it beautifully.
Yeah. Yeah. Where did his encouragement came from for you earlier on?
So actually, my grandmother, I remember, she saved me. She really saved my life. There were two things. One was that she would pick me up from school and take me golfing. And we would just let it out on the course, swearing, and just like, she let me drive the golf cart. And but she just gave me this freedom to just express. Ironically, on a golf course, maybe not the best place to do that, but still, right? She took me away from the toxicity of where my thoughts and feelings and the smells and everything, and then put me somewhere else outside. And we would just bond, and I would just vent, and she would ask me questions, and then she would make me feel confident with myself. And the other side was, it wasn't really a person, but it was the acknowledgement of my outlets. So my parents saw that my biggest passion was model trains. And in 6th grade, in the lowest point of my life, our basement flooded. So instead of rebuilding our basement, they built a table. And they said, you do the rest. We'll support you. And my mind exploded, right? I would spend hours in my basement building my train set. It's like modern day Minecraft, right? But like just, back in the day, we didn't have that. Yeah, right? So like, and I would just talk to myself, literally. And I felt like I was God. I could make mountains and towns. And I imagined I get to the eye level. Like, it was my world where I was absolutely, utterly free.
Max, what would you say to maybe neurodiverse individuals that have yet to embrace their passion, yet to find their identity? What would you say to them in order to sort of help them find that gift?
I would say you need to look at yourself in the mirror and imagine, shut your eyes, look at yourself in the mirror, or shut your eyes, wherever you are, and think of yourself as an explorer, someone that is discovering something new, someone that is going out there, pushing boundaries, seeing where life goes, because you're not going to find it the first time, probably. You're not going to find it the second time. But as an explorer, you can't just sit there and say, all right, I'm done. Nothing's happening. Being able to put yourself in that seat of, I'm going to find this no matter what. I'm going to find what I like, what my passion is at all costs. Because there is something, believe me, there is something for you. The worst thing that can happen is for you to accept that there's nothing, because that is just a falsehood. Put on that explorer cap and just keep going. Because you're going to land on something. And if you don't land on something today, if you don't land on something tomorrow, at least you tried. And that's a win. And that's a win.
I love that. I was in Florida giving a talk, and a mother came to me at the end of the talk and was very passionate. She was so inspired. She, her daughter was upstairs, a teenager, and she's like, I don't know what she's going to do. And I'm so worried. And she's so not willing to even come to the talk. And she says, I don't know what she's going to do. I don't know what her gift is. And I asked her, what does she likes to do when nobody's watching? And she said, oh, she just loves being with the dog. And the dog loves her. And, she can train that dog, and she can take that dog for a hike, and she throws the ball in the backyard, and she just gets her, so I said, what are you not seeing here? And the mother looked at me like, I don't know what you mean. And I said, this child get to be her best self when she is with animals. And the animals know that because they see her, and they see her, the joy that this gives her. Maybe she'll be a veterinarian. And she looked at me like, how did you figure this out? And I was like, because I wasn't trying to solve her. I wasn't trying to change her. I'm trying to let her lead. You have to let your child lead toward the things that when nobody's looking, they love to do, whatever they are, and then allow them to do more of it, because eventually that's going to give the truth to the gift, which is exactly what you both are saying.
my own experience growing up with our parents is there was no predetermined path. We did not have a path. It was, what are you interested in? I'm interested in basketball. All right, let's support Max playing basketball. Max is going to do his thing. Like, that's how my parents raised us. There was no, you need to have an all A's. It was, as long as you're doing your best, that's all that matters. They instilled the value of self worth and pride.
Mm.
And I'm so grateful for my parents for doing that. But to mention another piece of advice I would give someone that's looking for their passion is that there is no rush.
Mm.
There is no rush. Like you said, Gil, you're still trying to grow up. You're still trying to be your, grow up into the older version of yourself. My path through school, I repeated fifth grade. I went from public school to private school to public school to private school. No joke. Each one of those moments was stepping outside the path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just following what I wanted to do and where my heart was saying, and I had a supportive crowd cheering me on. If your child or if your friend or if you yourself are wondering, like, where is my direction? Where's my path? Just know that time is not against you. And if you are trying to rush into something, then you will not be happy. You don't know if that's a genuine path, if that's a genuine passion, or it's just a, facade that you're trying to create because you feel rushed or pressured to actually have something that you gravitate towards.
Talking about being on the path, what is next for the Superpower Mentors? What's next for you guys on your path?
Trying to distill this question into a succinct response, because what isn't next? That's probably a quicker answer. Our mission is to empower the next generation of neurodiverse thinkers to confidently succeed in any environment, period. So what's next in the short term is, how do we build relationships with people that share that too, that also believe that also want to support us in that mission? Because like Jake said, it takes a crew, it takes a village, it takes everyone playing their part to be successful in anything. That is what's next for us, is to build our crew
Mm-hmm.
and drive that ship, impact as many people as possible along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll say, again, Max and I are in lockstep on all of this. So what he said, I think too. But at the same time, what we also want, we're in a position now of look, after 10,000 sessions, we've worked with families from all over the world. We know this thing works. Mm-hmm. We're in a position now of where we are now talking to other people that are in this, such as, our therapists, right? In our schools and businesses, and being able to go after and support them in a much broader scale is something that we actively want. We're in a time of a lot of change. There's a lot of unknowns right now, and something that we're actively striving to be is to be, when a kid gets diagnosed with a learning difference, if someone is faced with that struggle, we want them thinking of Superpower Mentors. Get your kid a mentor. If it's not Superpower, just get your kid a mentor. Right. They need a mentor. Everyone needs a mentor, right? It's an essential missing piece that's in the equation that now people are just waking up to realize that is actually one of the most important pieces in the growth of an individual. Get them a mentor. And that's one of our missions of this year and moving forward, is to spread that message.
What's the best way for people out there that are listening today that want to follow you, wants to learn more, wants to get a mentor from you guys? What's the best way for them to reach out?
The best way you can do that is to visit our website, which is www.superpowermentors.com. You can reach out to us from there. You can check us out on our social medias, which is superpower_mentors, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and on Facebook, or you can find us individually and contact us.
We'll make sure to include all of your websites, your poem, and the beautiful film on that in the show notes as well. You guys, thank you so much for everything you're doing. Always so inspiring to talk to you, Jake and Max. And I just so glad we crossed paths. And I know what you're doing is really just like the most amazing. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for taking the time today and talking to us and being so candid and open about your own experiences. So I really appreciate you both.
It's important, Gil. So thank you for inviting us on.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us, Gil. This has been incredible. And your work in the community is second to none. So thank you.
If you enjoyed our conversation today, be sure to subscribe to this series wherever you get your podcasts. Visit dyslexicdesignthinking.com to learn more about our latest initiatives, including Dear Dyslexia, the Postcard Project, or to book Gil to speak at your next event or conference. Stay connected on Instagram at Dyslexic Design Thinking, or drop us a line at dyslexic@gershoni.com to receive our monthly newsletter and learn more about our upcoming programming. Dyslexic Design Thinking is produced by Gershoni Creative. Until next time, be well.